Hey everybody, Matthew here from MiniWarGaming.com, and welcome to this unofficial series of how to play Warhammer 40K 7th edition.
We play and call it work.
In this series, we're going to teach you how to play Warhammer 40K 7th edition. Now, we're not going to go through every single rule, but by watching these videos, you should get a basic grasp of how to play the game so that you can start playing with your friends today. In this first video, we're going to go over the general principles of how to play Warhammer 40K. Things such as measuring distances, unit coherency, characteristics, the basic things you need to know in order to be able to read the rules and understand what they're talking about. Let's start by talking about what you're going to need in order to play Warhammer 40K. First and foremost, of course, you need the rules. Make sure you have the current edition. Right now it's 7th edition. Nowhere in the book does it actually say that, so look for the book that looks like this. In addition to that, you are going to need the book for your specific army. These are called codices or codexes. This one is for the Space Marines. If you have these two books, then you'll have all the rules you need to play your army. These are also available in the version of iBooks or eBooks through your iPad or Android devices. You will also need a few gaming aids, including a measuring tape, 6-sided dice, a special 6-sided die that is called a scatter die that is sold by Games Workshop, and a set of templates. These are the green markers you see right here. You can buy these from Games Workshop, and there's other third parties that sell them as well. And of course, you are going to need models. Not as many as you see right here. I set these up more as a diorama to show how cool it looks. Every model has a set of characteristics such as strength or toughness, how well it shoots, how well it fights in close combat, how quick it is, how many attacks it gets, its leadership, and so on and so forth. I'm not going to go into detail exactly what each of these do. Instead, we're going to walk you through how to play the game, and as the different characteristics come up, we'll talk about them then. The rule book goes through right at the beginning each of the characteristics and generally what they will be used for. Everything in Warhammer 40K is organized into units. For example, we have a group of Space Marines right here, and they all function together as one unit. A unit moves together, shoots together, and assaults together, with some exceptions, of course. A unit can also be a unit of vehicles, such as these war tracks. Or it could even be a unit of one model or creature, such as this drop pod or this Morkanaut. Units must always stay together in something called unit coherency. Unit coherency is where every model is within 2 inches of another model from the unit, and there is an unbroken chain of models together. This may sound complicated, but it's pretty simple. All we have to do is look at the distances between each of these models and make sure that it's no more than 2 inches from another model, and that we don't have them broken up into more than one group. For example, here, each model is within 2 inches of another model from the unit, but we have a gap of more than 2 inches from the two groups. So this unit is not in coherency. All I'd have to do is move this model right here, and it is back into coherency. It's not that every model has to be within 2 inches of every other model, just of another model in the group. Because Warhammer 40K is played on a table with abstract terrain rather than on grids or hexagons, like on a board game or some other games that you might play, we have to use a measuring tape to determine distances. Distances are used everywhere. Things can move a certain distance. They can fire a certain distance. They can attack a certain distance. So we really need to be able to know how to measure from one thing to another. To measure the distance between two units, such as this unit of Space Marine Centurions and this unit of Orc Boys, we measure the distance between the two models closest to each other. To do this, we simply put the measuring tape starting at the end of the base of the Orc Boy and measure to the beginning of the base of the Space Marine Centurion. In other words, we measure the smallest distance between them. In most cases, everything is measured in inches, and so if the distance is slightly more than a certain inch, we count it as being further than that. Right here, for example, you can't see it necessarily on camera, but the two units are about 5 1/4 inches apart. So I'd say they're within 6 inches of each other. There's very few things that would operate in half inches in 40K. Models such as vehicles or other things without a base will often need to measure to the nearest point on their hull. So if we want to know the distance between this Land Raider right here and the Orc Boys, we would measure at the closest distance between the boys and this Land Raider. In this case, it's about 2.5 inches, so we'd count it as about 3 inches away. The exception here is when the weapons fire from the Land Raider. We'll get into this later in a later video, but essentially we'd have to measure the distance from the weapon itself to a model, whereas with non-vehicles, we don't care about where their weapon is actually modeled on the unit itself. Another very important concept is line of sight. In other words, can one model see another model? In some cases, this is pretty obvious. Obviously, this Space Marine Terminator can see this Orc boy, but because of terrain or other models, it's not always obvious. 40K uses what we call true line of sight, where all you have to do is bend down and look from your model's perspective, which is usually possible, sometimes it's hard, to see if they can actually see the other model. A model can see another model if it can trace an unbroken line to any part of its main body, its torso, arms, legs, or head, not things that are sticking out. For example, in order to see this Orc war boss, we can't just see its flag or its banner at the back. We have to be able to see the main body. This prevents people from getting penalized for making really cool conversions of their models or having really impressive banners. Like I said before, get down to your model's point of view, and then you should be able to look around and see what they can see. These Devastators obviously can see all of these Orc boys, but there's going to be some blocked by the building. Models within the same unit never block line of sight from other models. So this Space Marine right here can see through all of these other Space Marines, but he can't necessarily see through these Terminators, so we would have to check to see if they blocked it. Each game of Warhammer 40K is played in a certain number of game turns, generally from 5 to 7, depending on the scenario that you are playing. A game turn consists of 2 player turns. So if I was playing against you, I would go, and then you would go, or you would go, then I would go, depending on who goes first, and that would be an entire game turn. When you're reading the rule book and it uses the word turn, and it doesn't say player turn or game turn, assume it means player turn, unless it says game turn or game round. It's a very important distinction, as some effects will last a full turn, whereas some will last a full game turn. Each player turn consists of 4 distinct phases. On top of these phases, we have the start of the player turn and the end of the player turn. They're not really phases in and of themselves, but some special rules will say at the beginning of a player turn or beginning of a turn, do X, Y, or Z. Or they might say at the end of a player turn, do X, Y, and Z. These distinctions mean either before these 4 phases are done or after they are totally complete. Let's take a look at the 4 phases. The first phase is the movement phase. In this phase, the players will move each of their units a certain distance, up to a maximum of what the unit is allowed, using their measuring tape, of course, to see what it is. We're going to discuss this phase more in detail in the next video, but essentially this is where you deal with things such as difficult terrain, going up and down ruins, and other things that could impede your movement. The next phase is probably the most complicated phase in terms of rules. It is the psychic phase. This is where powerful psychers such as this Space Marine librarian vie for control over the warp to manifest different effects, from shooting magical bolts to protecting their own units to maledicting everybody else around them. This we'll cover in detail in another video. It probably needs its own video or 2 to explain how everything works. After the psychic phase, we have the shooting phase, where each unit chooses a target, measures distances, and then rolls to see if they hit, if they wound, and then sometimes the opponent gets to roll to see if they can save all of those wounds. The majority of the damage done in 40K is in the shooting phase. However, a lot of damage can also be done in the close combat phase. This is where units will move in to base contact with other units and then roll their dice, just like in the shooting phase, to try to hit and to wound, to see if their close combat weapons can destroy their enemies. Those are all the general principles I'll be covering in this video. Stay tuned for more videos where we're going to cover the movement and shooting phase in more detail. That'll be in part 2. The shooting phase, the psychic phase. We're going to talk about vehicles, unit types, all sorts of stuff to really get you started in playing Warhammer 40K 7th edition. And of course, we want you to watch the next video that's available in the link in the video description below, where we're going to play a small battle report between Space Marines and Orcs, just to show off how it works and starting to put all that together. The battle report is going to simplify things, but at the same time it's going to cover more than you see right here in this video. It'll help you see it all in a greater context. You're welcome, of course, to watch the rest of our battle reports too, but those will be much larger scale and might be harder to follow if you're brand new to the game. So go ahead and click that link below to go and watch the first battle report that goes along with this video. If you're not a MiniWarGaming Vault member, we welcome you to go and click it and join for free for 7 days. The MiniWarGaming Vault is where we put a lot of our battle reports, painting tutorials, behind the scenes, special battle reports, and tons of other videos. It currently has over 3,000 videos in there. About half of our videos go out for free, and the other half we put in the MiniWarGaming Vault. And as a Vault member, you'll have access to all of these instantly. Even during the 7-day trial, you have unlimited access to all of them. And it helps support us, helps keep the lights on, and helps us to build studios like this and paint the armies that you're seeing in these videos, pay our employees to make all the battle reports and the painting tutorials and the how to plays and tacticas and all the talk shows that we do to help bring you as much miniature wargaming entertainment as possible. If you're already a Vault member, thank you so much. We really appreciate your support. Without you, we wouldn't be able to do this. So go ahead, click the link below, stay tuned for part 2, and happy wargaming.